Superintendent mentioned earlier, this session is being recorded. So you'll see the recording button up there in the upper left. Yes, smile, you are being recorded. So welcome to the Michigan Business Innovation Association member meeting for the month of November. And this is a quarterly event that we are hosting, featuring organizations from around the state, including different speakers on various topics. So this is our first one, and so we're very excited and hope it goes well. I want to hear your feedback. We have an exciting lineup today. Before we get started though, I would like to ask everyone to introduce themselves in the chat. Type in your organization, that way we know who is here, and if anybody wants to have conversation or follow up later, they'll know who was in the meeting. And also, if you have questions during the session, you can ask them in the chat box and we will bring them up during the question and answer time. So there's no need to try to stop in the middle and ask somebody a question. You can just go ahead and pop that question right there into the chat. We will pull that up because odds are other people might be thinking the same question as well.
Well, I think.
Yes. Also, please remember to put yourself on mute if you are not speaking. And I'm going to get ready and give us a little overview of aMDI. aMDI provides a full range of services, including but not limited to developing analytical and physical models, rapid prototyping and fabrication systems, comprehensive testing for technical feasibility, and innovative research and development space. aMDI addresses business and market viability issues in collaboration with other entrepreneurial, regulatory, investment, and business architecture entities. Commercialization is facilitated at aMDI by connecting to the region's existing commercialization and financing organizations. In addition to the physicians, nurses, and clinicians, aMDI serves small companies as a contract R&D department and large companies by providing responsive intellectual capacity to meet the demands of unforeseen business cycles or emerging technologies. And so with that, I would like to turn it over to the good folks at Grand Valley State University's aMDI to introduce themselves, because they all have amazing bios, and I went to the website to read their bios. I can't do them justice. So I'm going to let each of them introduce themselves and brag about whatever portion of their amazing backgrounds they would like to brag about. We have a lot of great talent here, so thank you. Shall I turn it over to whom? Bonnie, to you, to Brent, who would like to take over?
Brent can go ahead and do it. Thanks, Sandra.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for joining us on today's meeting. I'm going to talk a little bit about myself, but really the most thing I'm proud about is what we're doing here at aMDI and the team that we have that are on the call, including Bonnie, Dottie, and John Hall. We have 5 full-time staff. We each, Bonnie, John, and I each bring in well over 20, 25, and 30 years experience in starting businesses, incubating businesses, building technologies, developing technologies. My career, I just call myself an engineer. 85% of all my work is out in the field today. Either it's a commissioned manufacturing line, it's a product or service of some kind. So without further ado, let me talk a little bit about aMDI. So first what we're gonna do today is I'm gonna give an overview of aMDI and our resources and talk about a few of our projects. I'll hand it over to John Hall. John will introduce himself, talk a little bit about his background, and then he will talk about specifically a major program we have in additive manufacturing with regards to accelerating bringing medical devices to market. So let me first share my screen. If you saw, here we go. Okay, can everyone see that? Good, thank you, Sandra. So first thing I want to highlight is that everybody that works at aMDI or works with aMDI, we're really devoted, as it says on the bottom tagline there, for the betterment of human health and well-being by bringing medical devices to market. As being part of Grand Valley State University, we are known as a non-instructional unit in the Padnos College of Engineering and Computing. We're very fortunate to have this kind of structure in the sense that we work directly with the students and the faculty to help industry partners, entrepreneurs, mom and pops to help bring their ideas to realization, hope to commercialize them. So as part of what we do at GVSU is we provide we enhance the student learning experience by immersing them directly into the engineering, biomedical sciences, and business viability questions, just like they would if they were out into industry today. See if we can get this into advance. There we go. So one of the first things I want to do is talk about what kind of services aMDI brings forward. And I think the key here is to understand that it's not just medical devices anymore. We're now known as aMDI, and we service a broad range of industries. And I'll touch on that in a minute. But broadly, we start out, sometimes clients come to us with just an idea. And we help them conceptualize, we brainstorm, we help them define weighting matrices, understanding the use cases. And if you don't know the use cases, that's fine. We help you on this whole process of taking a problem you may have or a dream that you may want to solve. And we help you quantify that to see if there truly is, if it's technically feasible, and is it a viable business. So that's what we do under those first two big arrows under conceptualization and maturation. And then along the realization side of it, we do prototyping, we do testing, and this testing is what we call pre-compliance testing, which we test to the same standards you would if you were going to go to an ASTM standard, an FDA standard, a CE mark, or a UL standard, but we're not a certifying agency. The value to you, whether it's a commercial product, a consumer product, in a medical device, is that when you actually want to go get it certified, you know you're already passing the standards to that fact. And then we work with industrial partners from across the state, from the UP to the west side, the east side of the state, to help you commercialize your product, whether it's the sales and distribution channels, contract manufacturing, or other design engineering that may be needed. And here is just a list of some of the things we do. The key here on the left-hand side are just some of the ideas that we can help you bring in your problem to market, or helping find the problems with it. On the right-hand side is we provide all engineering, mechanical, electrical, electronics, software, full stack software development, all the way down to embedded code. On the electrical engineering side, I'm going to show you some examples where we actually do PCB design. We have it manufactured outside of aMDI, but then we populate with boards, we write the code for it, and we test it, etc. So that said, I know John's going to have a few of his stories as well. That's very important. aMDI, a little bit about the history, is that we were launched back in 2015 in what we would call a beta aMDI. It was sort of an experiment by the university to see if aMDI, which does not receive any state funding from the educational side of it, from the academic side or the university, if we could turn this into a financially sustainable organization, which we have since then. But you can see early on, we started talking to organizations like Spectrum, the Heart and Vascular Institute. This one up here in the upper left-hand corner, if you can see my mouse, that was a remote robotic surgery project. And that's a fun story, and I'll try to go over it real briefly here. But we first started having these conversations early on, but it took us a couple of years before we could get through all the partnership and collaboration requirements when it comes to intellectual property, because we are working with a robot manufacturer on the east side of the United States, out of the Boston, Massachusetts area. And so we had to get through their intellectual property lawyers, Spectrum's lawyers, our lawyers. We had to get the contracts in place. We had to set up metrics. So that actually took two plus some years. But ultimately, we were able to complete the project. I think it was the summer of 2018, if I'm not mistaken. And we did 22 live surgeries on animals. Here in Grand Rapids, Michigan, we have what's called the Calvin College, and they have an animal study group there. And the surgeon was in Ludington, 105 miles away, and he did 22 surgeries, remote robotic surgeries, where aMDI played a critical role on the infrastructure developing that solution. A number of these projects include projects that came out of, and this is very important to understand, out of non-technical types. We have a hairdresser that suffered from a medical condition that caused her to generate excess saliva. This is a horrible problem, as you might imagine. I mean, if you're always having to spit into a cup and remove that, but in ICUs and any kind of neurophysiological condition you may find yourself coming out of anesthesia, you'll see a suction tube in your mouth. and the nurse has to come from time to time and suction out your mouth. If you're in a long-term health care facility, it's an issue as well. So aMDI was approached by a woman, a hairdresser. She is now recovered from this medical condition, but she developed a portable system where you could have something unobtrusively in your mouth, low visibility. It gives a person a quality of life. It gives them the mobility. We've had a stay-at-home dad that we had developed a handheld application for. So it was called Test for Time, in which you could have your children earn quality time to use their electronic devices by answering math questions that are age appropriate and grade appropriate. So you can see we've had a very vigorous program here at aMDI. Now, a number of these projects, which are critical for our audience, understand it's not just, a number of these projects are not just medical device anymore. And also there was a program from the state of Michigan, from the Michigan Economic Development Corporation, which we're very beholden to. They've been wonderful. They had a program called the Small Company Innovation Program, where the state of Michigan would invest a 1-for-1 match for every dollar the company was able to bring in cash, up to a $40,000 match. Now there's a program out there called BAF, which stands for the Business Accelerator Fund. That's another one that aMDI has had numerous projects with, where again, the state will, I believe it's up to the first $25,000, will just invest in the company without any requirements for a match. Over that, they start looking for matches, and also there's a small fee the company has to pay. So aMDI works with the Michigan Economic Development Corporation on MTRAC programs. There's a couple of other, I don't remember, BAF and SKIP, but we can talk about that as well. So in addition to what I'm going to walk you through on the tour today, I want to show you some of the other capabilities that we have available. We're located on the Medical Mile in Grand Rapids on the 5th floor of the Cook DeVos Health Sciences facility, where I'm going to be giving the physical tour. On the 2nd floor in this building, we also have access to all of the capabilities that are available to the university, and actually a number of other smart zones in other universities across the state. But this particular room, as you can see in the picture in the lower left-hand corner, you have a dancer. And if I zoomed in, you'd see that he'd have those little white ping pong like balls attached to him. And what they do in this is the cameras that are around the room using ultraviolet light are able to identify markers on the body. And on the floor here, there's a number of force plates. So it measures both the horizontal forces and the moments twisting around. So in this, we've done everything from running studies to jump studies to training athletes, measuring. There was a colleague of mine, he's doing a study on the concussion protocol for football players. And so they would have football players stand on these plates before and after they had these kind of concussions occur. In addition, the university is now in the facility called the Innovation and Design Center. And this is an architectural representation of that. This is located in downtown Grand Rapids, right near the Engineering Pew campus. And within there, our clients, they could be industrial partners or they could be clients. They have reception areas where they would come in and they could bring their clients in. We have a full product design and prototyping, a wide range of manufacturing, from injection molding to CNC machining to every kind of welding, ultrasonic welding for polymers, and also shared spaces where the student and staff can be in there. This is the Pew Engineering campus, where I think there's somewhere between $40,000 and $50,000 of prototyping, manufacturing, and other kind of industrial equipment available for our clients. This shows in that same building. So when we were looking at that three-dimensional architectural view, this was the area we were looking at. We have 4,000 square feet set aside for aMDI. And John Hall is going to talk a little bit about our additive 3D polymers program. aMDI is now working with some industrial partners, the Department of Commerce at the federal level and state agencies, to put in services for additive 3D metals as well. That's quite a mouthful. So as you can see, we have outlined blue spaces where industrial partners can work and also house themselves. So without any further ado, what I want to do next is open this up for questions. Are there any questions by the audience out there at all? Or any of my colleagues on the call as well?
No questions yet in the chat room.
Thank you, Carmen, so much. Okay, so what I'm going to do, go back, is now, let's see, escape, stop sharing. Okay.
Sorry, there is one question. My apology. I think it just came in.
That's okay.
Is aMDI fee for service, or
Oh,
are there any technology sharing requirements?
wow, what a great question. I can't believe I stepped over that. That's a great question. Thank you for the question. Yes, we are fee for service. We do not get direct funding from the university. We do not get direct funding from the state as well as part of the line item. So yes, 100% of our work is fee for hire. And now that could come from matching grant money, like I said, from BAF or SKIP or MTRAC or other programs, or they're just strict contracts. Our fee for service model could be a cost plus fixed fee, time and materials could be fixed price. All of those work just fine for us. Um, One of the unique things about aMDI that a lot of clients, not only our cost value proposition, but also the intellectual property value proposition, is that if you pay for the work, you own all the work. So we're not, aMDI is, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's just not our business model. We normally don't take an equity position. The university doesn't take an equity position. However, there are always exceptions. So let's say that you brought your project into the university, and I also have to say this, again, I'm glad we brought this up. aMDI might not be the best place to first start out. Like all the universities across the state, there's always senior design projects, or they might call them capstone projects, or we have design classes. In fact, we have a biomedical undergraduate degree and a biomedical engineering graduate degree. And so there are medical device and design classes dedicated just to design. So you could bring your project in for a very small fee, from a few $1,000s to $5,000. You could have a student team under the guidance of a professor start out some of this design work. And then it might come to aMDI. Well, in those cases where the students may have actually contributed to your intellectual property, you can negotiate up front where some of that might be shared, or you own all of that. If you bring it to aMDI, there are some programs where you may, if the intellectual property is coming out of the university, then there are some state programs, again, through MSF and MEDC, where they will fund these programs. I think it's the MTRAC program is the big one. I still can't remember. There's another one out there. I can't remember real quick. And then if there's some shared IP, we could actually architect something that way. But the bottom line is the university position and my position at aMDI is that we don't own the intellectual property. If we do, we assign it automatically over to you. If you want to get into some equity sharing things, we're typically very gracious, because our model has always been, if we do good work, you'll come back. If you're one of these lucky companies that generates millions, tens of millions, or billions of dollars, you'll likely come back and work with us again. So that's more of our business model. But great question. Thank you.
I have two more questions.
Oh, good.
Responsive intellectual capacity. Love it. Will you please describe?
Responsive, what?
Intellectual capacity. I think it was probably something you mentioned early on when you first started. This was from David Bloom. David, would you like to clarify your question?
Actually, that was something Sandra said.
Thank you, Sandra.
I just thought it was a great buzz phrase, and I wanted to get a little meat on the bone.
Yeah, well, that's cool.
I'm pulling it from the introduction that Bonnie provided to me.
Okay, everybody's like handing this one off. Bonnie.
Yeah,
No.
aMDI helps large companies. Yeah.
I've got the answer for this. I understand what we were trying to articulate there. And that basically is, it comes with another catchphrase we like to use. And it really defines how we differentiate ourselves from others. We put the right team together at the right time to answer the right question. So I got to do a case study for you. So there are a lot of good engineering companies across the state of Michigan, and I'm not trying to critique any of their work model, but they have a full-time staff of, let's say, 10 engineers. And then a project comes to them and 8 of their engineers are busy. And so they give that work to the other 2 engineers and ask the other ones who are too busy to say, hey, can you help this guy out, et cetera. The nice thing about aMDI is, because we have access to all the engineering faculty and students, and oh, by the way, if we can't find the talent within GVSU, we have the right and opportunity to go reach out to other universities, whether it's Michigan State, Lawrence Tech, University of Michigan, which we have worked with all of those before, and I'll tell you a story behind each of those. So we put the right team together. If you need somebody that knows computational fluid dynamics, and hematology, we can put the right team together. And it's not just because they're not billed or they're not busy. We put the right team to answer the right question. But great question, David. Thanks for holding us accountable to that phrase.
Not about accountability, just like I said, we're coming at this blind men and elephant style. So I'm not going to let a pungent phrase like that drop. I want you to tell me.
I love it. I love it.
Thanks for that.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're welcome.
One more question before we let you carry on, Brent. Are you doing any work with the I 4.0 Accelerator at Automation Alley? It's a partnership with Rocket Labs and Lawrence Tech's Centropolis Accelerator.
Great question. I actually got off the phone with John Betts out of Automation Alley, and yes, if we didn't get hit by COVID, we actually had part of our marketing plan is aMDI was going to reach out now that have the feet underneath us and we're financially sustainable and working more closely on a day-by-day basis with the other smart zones like Automation Alley and Lawrence Tech. And I'm originally from Jackson, Michigan. My career took me to Texas for 25 years. So I'm back now, but I've been to the Rocket Lab, and yeah, so we actually have conversations frequently from the UP to the east side of the state and down. And now this is no critique, but currently we get somewhere between 30 and 40% of our work comes from the east side of the state, and now more of it is coming up from projects up in the Flint area as well, which I guess is still the east side of the state, Ann Arbor as well. But yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, very cool. Thanks.
Thank you. We'll let you carry on with your presentation now.
Yeah, I didn't know I was carrying on, but I'll do the best I can. So here we go. All right, so now we're going to go on the physical tour, and I'm going to swap the phone around if it'll let me. Hold on. Oh, got to turn this around. Oh, I got to start the video first and turn this one off. And oh, come on now. There we go. Okay, good. Well, so you saw what my ugly mug is, and I'll step back. What you're looking at right now, and I'll do it horizontally, is you're looking at the aMDI Engineering Design Lab. So this is, like I said, located on the 5th floor of the Quick DeVos Health Sciences building. So within this building, we have access to all the students in the training that has to do with health sciences, and we've actually used them. They actually have a full hospital bedroom that's got 2 hospital beds in it, all the instrumentation's on the wall. And we actually did a study and a video for a client where we helped develop a promotional video for something they wanted to use in the hospitals. But in this lab, as we walk along here, you can see that we've got a wide range of testing capabilities here. This is our water tank test when we're doing some work in ultrasonic engineering down here. So actually what we do is in this particular project where we're looking at the human femur, this is a 5-foot, the femur of a 5'10" male, 150 pounds. But anyways, we're using ultrasound, which is, these are some examples of some of the ultrasound transducers we're using for a client where the signal is generated here, and then we read the signal on the oscilloscope. But ultimately what this client is wanting to do is they're monitoring how well your bone is healing during a fracture. So, and I'm going to talk more about that in a minute, but it's not for osteoporosis, even though it could be used for osteoporosis, but it's able to identify early on if you have a malunion or a non-union, and then the clinician can then do an early intervention and change your treatment plan. So there's more on that in a minute. Within here, we have everything. We have all the resistors, capacitors, inductors that you would need for this kind of work. And continuing on, why is that so much important? Well, here is a similar device. Let me go back and get my bone fragments here. This is not a real human male, obviously. This was scanned and somebody generated it. But ultimately, you can see in this device here, we can put the bone inside this mechanism here. Now, why is this important for those of you who are on this call today? This is known as electromechanical design project. And so everything from the mechanical design where we 3D printed that here at GVSU to the electrical design and selecting motors and actuators and this whole design, in addition to doing all the microelectronics here to control this. Now this system, the client who is doing the bone modeling work, they're using what's known as machine learning and artificial intelligence. And the simplest way to do it is that is all founded. The reason because AI has become such a big deal now is because there's what out there is called big data. We now have the data storage on terabytes on a hard drive that's on your hard drive. We now have high-speed computational power where you can look at literally tens of millions of records in a few milliseconds and then use all that data using things called machine learning, deep learning, and artificial intelligence to make decisions. Well, in the case of bone healing, there's no huge database on fractures. So what we've done here at aMDI is we've actually purchased pig femurs that were harvested by a regulated company for research, shipped in here with the skin. We would fracture them, and then we would put them in the different test fixtures, and we would do all that testing here. Now, John Hall's also going to talk a little bit more about other testing we've done, and that's the purpose why I'm spending so much time on this. We do everything from the software on these microelectronic devices. We do the mechanical design. We do this under a value proposition where we can get matching funds from the state, depending on how it's set up, to really bring real world markets to bear. Now, here's a couple more examples that we've got. This is some other work in ultrasound, but again, you can see, and I'm going to show some examples of this. This is like John was saying, where's my camera? Hold on. It's over here, I think. Oh yeah, sorry about that. Here we go. Okay, so here's a PCB board that we actually designed. Is that focused? I think it is. So you can see it's a multi-layered PCB. We designed it here internally after we breadboarded it. So for those of you who don't know, well, here's one example. This is an example of breadboarding right here. So you put your chips over here. This is a development board. You put some other chips, you wire it up. And then after you get the circuit working, you create a schematics file and a layout file, and you send this design off to get manufactured. And then we put the chips on, we wrote all the software for it, and we tested it. And then you ultimately develop devices like this that was used by one of our federal clients, and that'll be that. One of the things I want to show, this is a very important project. I have nothing else to show you, but this is Lila. This young girl had a disease called SMA, spinal muscular atrophy. That's what this is here, type 1 and type 2. She was 16 months old. And when you have spinal muscular atrophy, what happens is the signals from your spine don't get to the muscles. So what happens? Your muscles atrophy. So the disease state's called spinal muscular atrophy. Well, there are companies out there that sell robotic arms that you can attach to the little girl's arms, and then she can move around and play with toys and such. Those arms cost between $8,000 and $10,000 a piece. They came, and then, however, our insurance companies in the United States don't pay for those arms, because when you have type 1, type 2 SMA, your projections for living a long life, her livelihood was somewhere between 16 and 18 months. And so the insurance company said, no, we're not going to pay for that. Well, they brought this problem to us, and I was a professor. I was teaching advanced medical design device, and three of my students developed these arms. And this is made out of, we rapid prototype these parts in here. These fixtures are mounted to the back of her wheelchair or her high chair. And then this is used with springs and parts from Home Depot, springs and rubber bands and bolts and nuts, to where she could start playing with toys. So aMDI is a very unique place where we take on challenging problems like this, where there's no money to be made. But this young girl then enjoyed feeding herself with a spoon for the first time, coloring with crayons for the first time, and playing with Mickey Mouse toys like that. So, okay, so continuing on, I'll just scan this side of the room real quickly. Normally, without COVID and shutdown, this would be filled with students and faculty and engineers doing mechanical design, electrical design, and everything else. So with that said, what I want to do next is hand this over to John. So let me do a little bit of this stuff on my phone. Try not to do this. There we go. Stop the video. And I'll go over to the laptop, John, and I'll pull up your PowerPoint presentation, all right?
Okay, thank you. I guess I'll take this time then when you're pulling that up to do a quick little introduction for myself. I have degrees in biomedical engineering, both a bachelor's degree from Case Western Reserve University in Cleveland and the University of Akron, also in biomedical engineering, and kind of an emphasis in material science and mechanical design. For my career, as Brent mentioned earlier, I've got 25 plus years experience in mostly in the medical device design and development, from like single person startup companies to the large med device companies that probably a lot of you have heard of, like, the Abbott Laboratories and Medtronics of the world. And, throughout that, I've always tried to focus on, innovation and, simplifying, problems to find, the best and most economical solution. So I think I have 20 plus issued patents, and I think around 13 product introductions throughout my career. And so I came to aMDI, I guess about a little over a year and a half ago. And, really the thing that brought me, to aMDI was, this, opportunity to explore polymer additive manufacturing as a tool for production and see how that might be able to accelerate medical device development. And this is a 3-year program that, was, I think it had about a year, into it whenever I joined aMDI. But really the focus of it is it's a collaboration between a company called MediSurge, which is a contract manufacturer in the West Michigan area, the city of Grand Rapids, and then Grand Valley State. And really, as I mentioned, trying to investigate, where does polymer additive manufacturing make sense is not just a prototyping tool like it's been used for probably almost 3 decades now, maybe even getting close to 4 decades, but actually as a tool for production. So what I'm going to talk about here a little bit in the slide deck that I have prepared for you is just talking about the polymer additive manufacturing system and the process that we have at aMDI, and then how that might be useful for some of your clients or some of the companies that you might be familiar with that are trying to push their medical device technology or even other technologies forward. So first I wanted to talk about the vat photopolymerization. And this is actually the first type of additive manufacturing in polymers that really came to be. It started all the way back in the mid 1980s, and with the stereolithography apparatus. And since that time, there's been really tremendous steps forward in the technology, in especially in the last decade or so. And now there's the process is called the digital light processing or synthesis, where the entire build platform of whatever you're constructing is projected at the same time. So really improves the build speed, as well as Carbon 3D is a company that has some intellectual property in a technology called continuous light interface production. And this really allows you to build parts that have functionally identical mechanical properties regardless of how they're printed. So Brent, if you want to advance the next slide. Yeah, so this is, you can see the video playing now. This is a time-lapse, video. So it'd be nice if the things printed that fast, but they've gotten faster, but not really quite that fast. But what's really changed here in the last, 20 years or so in liquid photopolymer additive manufacturing? I mentioned already, print times have gone down pretty significantly. The material properties have also gotten a lot better, more consistent, and there's also a lot more options. I have some samples I'll show you here, a little bit later on, just to kind of show you the range of material properties and what you can 3D print now. The costs for the printing, both for the equipment and for the resins themselves, have gone down. And then the mechanical properties have also improved dramatically. So as I mentioned, a lot of times in traditional 3D additive manufacturing, you have different mechanical properties depending on how the layers are attached to each other. And with the clip technology in particular, now you really do have functional isotropic properties, meaning they're the same in all directions. And also the mechanical properties are a lot more stable than they used to be. It used to be that parts would be very fragile over time. So let's move on now. Well, I guess the last thing that was on there was just that the print resolution has gotten significantly more refined, and you can print much greater detail now than you could in the past. So now we'll talk about the cell layout that we have in our additive manufacturing lab, and you'll see this here a little bit later when we continue on with the virtual tour. But as I mentioned, this is a collaborative effort with a contract manufacturer called MediSurge. This lab that you're going to see, our production cell, is actually registered as a satellite facility for MediSurge, so it can fall under their ISO certification. It's set up for one-piece flow, and it is capable now for both production, prototyping, production, and making clinical grade components. So again, this additive manufacturing cell was put into place and installed in February of 2019. And throughout that year, a lot of time was spent in terms of training and bringing up the equipment and getting it certified. So both MediSurge and the Applied Medical Device Institute are certified production partners with Carbon. And that means that we've gone through and we've been certified to run, I think it's about a dozen different materials that they have available. We have over 15 employees between MediSurge and aMDI that have been trained extensively in additive manufacturing technology. We had a master's thesis that was defended, which looked at and confirmed the isotropic mechanical properties with regard to the print direction. And we have this as a student learning center now for additive manufacturing as a tool for Grand Valley State. We've had production requests for quotes, and we've received those and quoted them. And so right now our cell is ready for both prototyping and small scale production. So just kind of looking at some of the benefits of additive manufacturing and how they come into play in medical device manufacturing, you can see now that there's no cost for tooling in the traditional sense that a lot of times if you're going to make a medical plastic component, you're going to have to create a injection mold for that. So there's no need for tooling like that for additive manufacturing. So that saves you some cost and some time for development. There's also minimal waste for the material, and you can really manage your inventory levels and print on demand as you need to. The next point is the iterative design really is kind of built into the process. The Carbon M2 system that we have is still a fantastic tool for doing prototype and design iterations. And the benefit that you have is that when you're doing that, you're actually producing parts that are representative of what the production part will be if it's going to be manufactured with additive manufacturing. And then, it also decreases some design limitations that you have with traditional manufacturing. So you can, do more complex shapes. You can combine parts, which I have a case study here that I'll talk about shortly that kind of shows the benefits of that. And you can just create, geometries and parts that you wouldn't be able to create with a normal traditional manufacturing method. Next slide, please. So this is a case study that I wanted to share with you from our industry collaborator, MediSurge. So they had a client that was interested in this fluid manifold. And you can see the picture on the left there is, the current, state of the device. So it's a total of 7 different components, some machined, components, some purchased molded components, and then it's bonded all together. We looked at this as a case study where you can eliminate and build all of that as one component. And then you can even take it a further step where you reduce some of the material that you don't need. So we'll step through those in these next slides. So again, the current design, 7 components, gluing of 6 different, joints between the parts. Because of those gluing steps and that, there's a critical risk of separation, there'd have to be tensile testing, to confirm that the glue joints are functionally effective. And even with that, there's still a risk of separation in the field. And if you look at the cost of all this, and this is a low volume product, I think this is, maybe 200 to 400 parts a year, the cost is around $27. So looking next at the slide here of just doing a direct replacement with additive manufacturing, you can design this part as just one component now. So now you have one instead of 7 components. There's no gluing, so there's no opportunity for, missing a glue joint or a field separation. It's a functionally equivalent part to what the original part was. The material has already undergone, some biocompatibility screening from the carbon from the resin manufacturer. And, the cost is actually, a little bit less expensive to do it this way when you factor in all of the labor and the mechanical testing and the scrap that you have to have with, the traditional manufacturing method. So now if we look at the next stage, or the next possibility here, is to, take away some of the parts that you don't need if you're not starting with a block of polycarbonate and machining it out, right? So you don't need all those, parts that you might, or the bulk of the part that you would start with if you're doing subtractive manufacturing. So this allows you to reduce the cost. You still have the same functional equivalency, about, half of the part weight before, which isn't probably super critical in this application, but there are other applications where that would be much more important. And now the cost is about almost a $7 a part savings. So that's a good case example of, where you can have a situation where, it solves some risk problems, and it actually is less expensive, and not to mention that it simplifies your supply chain as well. So the next case study that I wanted to cover with you is for an introducer hub. So this is a hub that gets bonded onto a shaft down there. You can see in the lower picture or rendering, that hub would get bonded on there, and it's basically a handle to help a clinician be able to introduce a catheter or a device into a patient. Next slide, please. With this, looking at a traditional injection mold for this, you'd probably be looking at around a $10,000 cost. Building for a single cavity mold, you probably have about $1 a piece part cost, as well as a lead time of maybe 4 to 8 weeks to build the mold. That's after you've already done all your design work. And then, probably a little bit longer than that to iterate on it. Usually you have to kind of fine tune these things. It would give you an annual capacity of about 120,000 parts. If you look at that with that 3D additive manufacturing, again, you've got no capital expense. There's zero mold cost. The parts are a little bit more expensive, probably going to be around $3 a piece. But now instead of having a minimum order quantity that's probably like 500 or 1,000 pieces, it's basically what you can fit on one build platform, which in this case, I think about 80 parts. The lead time to build these would only be a couple of days, and you probably have an annual capacity of around 100,000 parts. So if you look now at where's that economic balance point for this type of a part, it's right around 5,000 parts where, if you're building less than that, it's less expensive to use additive manufacturing. Whereas you build more than that, traditional manufacturing would be less expensive. So you can see an example here, right? If you're only doing 500 parts in the first year, additive manufacturing saves you a lot of money. And a lot of times, especially with these types of introducer parts, there may be half a dozen different sizes of extrusion that you want to bond on into this hub. And if that's the case for traditional injection molding, you're going to have to build different tooling and inserts for each of those different versions. And that's going to be additional time, additional costs. You got to change over if you want to build different parts. You don't have any of that cost or expense with additive manufacturing. You can just build, you can even build a variety of different versions on the same build platform if you wanted to manage it that way. So again, just to kind of recap some of the benefits of additive manufacturing, we talked about the the carbon M2 printer that we have, which utilizes digital light synthesis and the continuous liquid interface production. That really gives you a quick, high resolution part build, as well as the uniform mechanical properties. I have a list here of the different materials. We oftentimes recommend that people start with a prototyping material just so you get an understanding about how the part design is and how to orient it whenever you're printing it. And then we have different engineering materials, and I'll show you some examples of those here after the slide deck presentation. But again, just reviewing through the benefits, we have reduced capital investment, you can build on demand. You get faster to market. You have, design freedoms that you don't have with traditional manufacturing. And you're building, if you're going to be, doing production in additive manufacturing, you're getting your production equivalent parts right from the beginning. And it still allows you to do that iterative, design process whenever you are going through your design work. So here's a list of some of the different medical device applications that we've explored. And I should mention as well that, we've looked at using this for other fields as well as outside of medical device. We've worked with a bowling products company on a kind of a unique design for one of their automated lane cleaning pieces of equipment. So there's a lot of different applications that are outside the medical field, which we're certainly happy to take a look at as well. I think that's it for the slide deck, right? Yep. So again, you're welcome to reach out to Dr. Nowak or myself, either by phone or email, if you have other questions about this, or if you have something you'd like us to explore with you.
Hey, John, can I add something real quick as part of what you were talking about? So this program that John just talked about was a 3-year program, and it's a $1.6 million public-private partnership. So when you look at the wide range of kind of programs we have here for all of your clients across the state, we're a resource for everybody across the state, and we're collaborating, like I said, with the University of Michigan out of Ann Arbor. We've written 2 DoD proposals, one with Michigan Tech out of the UP and an EDA proposal. So what John was exploring, what we were exploring in this 3-year grant was how could this support 3D printing as a manufacturing system, as a production system, not just prototyping. I'm sure everyone here is aware of the fact that you can do prototyping, but when does this become a value proposition for manufacturing? And so we can provide also advisory services. We can look at your particular facility, if you've got a manufacturing facility, contract manufacturing, or others. But I just wanted to share that as well on top of what John just said. Well, if you don't mind, there's one other person I'd like to introduce today, if that's all possible for the people on the call. I don't know everyone who's attending. What I do want to do is make sure we introduce Bonnie Doughty. She is our operations manager and a key person on the aMDI team. And I talked about this before, about we're not just bringing in engineering services, but biomedical, but also incubator services. Bonnie worked 5 years with GR Current. She worked for numerous years at the president of the university at GVSU as well. But so aMDI, again, is a resource across the state, whether you're talking about incubation, innovation services like you do through MBIA, or engineering or biomedical services. So I want to open this up for any other questions. Carmen, do you know if there's any others?
Hi, I don't have any other questions other than what's already been asked, but I will open up to the floor and see if anybody wants to jump in with anything right now. Or type in the chat. That's fine. Brent and John and Bonnie will share their contact information after the event for you to get back in touch with them if you have questions. You'll be able to find them as well. So I actually would like to take a moment to thank Brent and John and Bonnie from aMDI. I think this has been a wonderful presentation, a great opportunity from folks around the state to not only learn more about you, if they've already known about you, but to be introduced to you as well. So I just appreciate your time and your efforts. It was a wonderful presentation, and to get a tour as well. I thought that was fantastic, especially in these times of really feeling disconnected from each other. I can say that myself. So the thumbs up show that we all appreciate that. And thank you for spending time in your labs right now too. So we greatly appreciate that. I'm going to be on for a couple more minutes. I'm going to say a few things about the MBIA. So if anybody wants to jump in with a question, feel free to pop it up on the chat while I'm just kind of saying a few closing remarks as well. So I want to say thank you to all the other participants who have joined us today. I think everybody has introduced yourselves in the side chat bar. If you haven't, please feel free to do that so that we know who is here, that we know that you're interested in the innovation ecosystem here in Michigan, not only of using MBIA as a vehicle to connect each other, but really using yourselves as networks as well. You know, we'll be able to share this information, again, not only with aMDI, but we're also going to promote this on our website in our member resources page and share the content with the network. So folks will get to see this presentation, even if they didn't have a chance to log in with us today. And the folks at aMDI will share it with you guys as well, and you guys can promote it too. For those of you who are unfamiliar with the Michigan Business Innovation Association, we are a membership organization, advocacy organization, and connector of resources and information education for folks like yourself across the Michigan innovation ecosystem. We're doing some really neat things regionally and nationally as well, but I'm going to stick to just talking to you about our statewide organization today. We provide I should say in the past, we've provided 2 kind of larger events in person every year, and we're pivoting those probably virtually in this upcoming year. So stay tuned. We usually have our annual member meeting sometime in the spring. We're planning for that right now. We'll pivot depending on whether we're going to be able to be in person or not. That's a chance over a day or a day and a half for, again, all of us as professionals to get together, have some education and training, and really listen and learn from one another. Our other major event that we co-sponsor every year is the Great Lakes International Innovation Network, the GLIN, and we are actually the founders of the GLIN Network, and that's a regional event that we co-host every year. It's actually going to be in Ohio this year because we rotate among states every year. And again, please stay tuned to see whether it's going to be in person or virtual this year. A little closer on the calendars will be our next virtual member meeting. And that's going to take place on February 22nd. Originally, it was announced for February 15th, but we'll change it because of President's Day holiday. Our own Sandra Cochran at the WMed Innovation Center will be hosting that virtual member meeting where we'll get a chance to learn a little bit more about the WMed Innovation Center, get a tour and presentations of her center that way. So please join us back on February 22nd for that meeting. And I'm just going to do a slight pitch for the MBIA. I think many of you are members of the MBIA. We hope you would consider rejoining in this upcoming year because we have some exciting things planned. Again, if they're just going to be virtual and eventually in person. But I just want to make mention that we actually have, in addition to the innovation network of partners such as yourselves, we also have some partners and corporate sponsors that are part of the association. So please stay tuned for special connections, special maybe offerings from those corporate sponsors that we're going to start to communicate in these upcoming months as well. And so in addition to the regular meetings such as these, we have 2 events every year, and then we do advocacy, education, and training. And again, we're pivoting to online for many of those, but we're hoping to roll those out and share those with you as well. If you're looking to join the association, please feel free to contact Sandra or myself, and we'd be able to share information with you and share the opportunities that are available, not only as an individuals, but as an organization as well. I think that is what I have to say today. We like to usually do some sort of networking activity. We just save that for the introductions in the chat. So again, feel free to scroll along, see who's with us today, and we will share with you guys after the meeting who was part of this meeting so that we can, again, get together in a couple months and share resources with one another. I will just open up to the floor to see if anybody else has anything to add. If not, we might adjourn this meeting a few minutes in advance.
I had one. Okay, I threw it in the chat too, so they may have seen it or you may have seen it. Anyways, my question was for aMDI, John or Brent or Ronnie, do you accommodate or can you accommodate any type of engineering based endeavor, or do you have certain areas that you really prefer, like medical device or diagnostic or energy? Are you totally agnostic, or do you have areas in which you really specialize?
That's a great question. Thanks, Sandra, for asking that. Our niche is what we like to call the multidisciplinary problem. So if it's got an overlap between medical sciences and engineering, if it's got computational modeling along with embedded programming, so it could have some software. So the answer to that is yes, we're agnostic. However, we do not have depth in chemical engineering, and pharma, so to speak. So that would include process control on how to make medications or biologics of that nature. But then again, that's where we would team with somebody. So, because very rarely do you just need just a chemical engineer, strictly chemical engineer, or a pharmacist. But that's a great question. Thanks.
Great. Are there any other questions? Well, if not, then I would just thank you again for attending. I hope you enjoy the rest of your afternoon. And until we see each other again, be well. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.